Joseph Parker versus Derek Chisora, or Chisora, as Dylan White likes to say. Um, where to start? Both guys have weighed in. Derek Chisora is weighing in at 250.5 pounds. It's pretty standard for him. I think he's been kind of between 245 and 260 for the past couple of years. So this is a good weight for him to operate at. Joseph Parker has weighed in at 241.25 pounds, which I think also is fairly standard for him too, over the past couple of years. How does this fight go? Now, I think this is a very intriguing fight. Do I think it's pay-per-view worthy? No, but nevertheless, here it is. I believe that there are a lot of factors playing into this fight. Like most fights, of course, but with this one, it can go a few ways. I think we know what we're getting with Derek Chisora. He's had a pretty consistent form over the past, I want to say 2 years, maybe even 3, of being able to bring that pressure, bring the high volume of punches, consistent pressure, the good condition that is required for that pressure. And he's been able to do it, say, for example, in his last fight against Usyk, in the absence of a crowd, which is, it's going to be very similar to tomorrow night's environment. But the thing is, Chisora has still lost 10 fights now. Whenever he's stepped up, he hasn't won. Maybe other than the Takam fight. And I think he's still going to be able to bring that pressure. And that's one of the key things, because we've seen that with Joseph Parker, he's lacked some fire. He lacks that tenacity sometimes. And say, for example, in the Dylan White fight, Dylan White was mugging him at times. Dylan White had too much dog for Joseph Parker. And it's really a shame, because I say a shame, it's a shortcoming of Joseph Parker, and he's a very unique fighter, because look, at 6'4", he's a decent weight, but he's a very naturally strong man. He's obviously Samoan, and people from that part of the world, Polynesia, Micronesia, they're renowned for having very strong builds. They're very naturally muscled, very heavily muscled. Yeah, they carry fat as well, so they're not as ripped to defined as some other races, but they're very strong people. So he has a lot of natural power and speed, and he doesn't really have to blow up in weight. And on top of that, he has a very good engine. He's got pretty decent stamina. I think he's proven over the years. And on top of that, he's got a good chin. I think Joseph Parker's chin is probably one of the best in the division. So yeah, very unique combination within Joseph Parker, but he lacks that tenacity and that true fire. And when someone sticks it on him, he kind of goes into his shell a little bit. And I can't remember who it was, but someone pointed this out a couple of days ago, where because he's been in he's been training with Andy Lee, which we'll touch on in a bit. He's been training with Andy Lee, Tyson Fury, and I'm assuming, I may be wrong, but I'm assuming that maybe he's been around Javon Hill as well. As I say, assuming that he's with Tyson at the same time. But these are Javon Sugar Hill and Andy Lee are both Kronk guys. Now, they've been influenced quite heavily, I think it's fair to say, by Manny Stewart, one of the greatest, if not the greatest trainer of all time. Manny Stewart knew when to get guys to bite down on their gum shield and get rid of someone. And he tried to bring that fire out. I think you see it best examples when he was working with Vladimir Klitschko. I don't want to say that Joseph Parker has the same psychological makeup as Vladimir Klitschko, but Klitschko did lack that tenacity as well at points. usually when someone stuck it on him. And so, is there a potential for that, let's say, Manny Stewart Kronk mentality to rub off onto Joseph Parker? I mean, I guess we'll find out, but personally, I think he's going to need it because he cannot afford to get mugged by Derek Chisora in this fight, because Chisora is one of those guys where if you give him an inch, he'll take a mile. If you give up some ground to him, if you give up, you know, if he senses you buckling, he'll double down, because that he understands that that's his route to victory. And as such, I think it's important for Joseph Parker to look back at, say, the Dillian Whyte fight, the Carlos Takam fight, fights where his desire has maybe wavered a little bit, and he has to grow from that, and he has to say, no, not again. And he has to draw his line in the sand and say, you know, cross this line and I'll batter you. Because that's what I think he's going to have to do. He's going to have to stick it on Derek Chisora, which I believe he can do. And I'm willing to go out on a limb and predict that. Do I want to predict that Joseph Parker wins this fight by stoppage? I'm very tempted, I must say, because Derek Chisora has been hurt multiple times. He's been stopped multiple times. Recently as well, it was only December 2018 when he was brutally knocked out by Dillian Whyte. I believe he was buzzed and hurt by Usyk in his last fight back in October. Does Joseph Parker punch harder than Usyk? I'd be willing to wager. That. Does he set up his shots as good as Usyk? No, I don't think he does. But that being said, Derek Chisora, I believe, is going to probably fight a similar way to the way he fought Usyk, and therefore present an easy target. So I believe that will be negated, and Joseph Parker won't have to set up his shots as well as Usyk does. Oh, this is a tough one. I believe that the most unlikely outcome is Derek Chisora stopping Joseph Parker, because I believe Parker has a proven chin, and though Chisora's power is decent, and it's definitely improved in recent years with his punch technique, I can't see him stopping Parker. Then I could see, can he beat Parker on points? Maybe, but I think he'd really have to out hustle Parker, and I think Parker would have to be in his shell and really be intimidated by Chisora. So then it's between Parker on points and Parker on stoppage, assuming that there's no draw. I'm going to say that with Andy Lee in Parker's corner, who was a legitimate puncher in his day, has probably, I believe that he's going to get Joseph Parker to go through the gears if Parker manages to buzz Chisora like Usyk was able to. And so I'm going to stick my neck out on the line. I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to say that Parker stops Chisora around 10. So 9, 10 or 11, I can see Parker stopping Chisora. Maybe not knocking him out cold like Dillian Whyte did, but I believe that Joseph Parker has enough suddenness, enough explosiveness, and assuming that Andy Lee has improved his setup on the punches, I believe that he's going to have enough suddenness, enough explosiveness to buzz Chisora, and then follow him up. Maybe stopping Chisora in his feet. Maybe the towel gets thrown in, referee jumps in, something like that. So I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna stick my neck out on the line. Could go horribly wrong, and Joseph Parker gets sparked out by Chisora in 1 or 2 rounds. Hey, it's all fun and games. That's why we watch boxing. That's part of the excitement. I just want to touch though on the coaching situation, because of course Derek Chisora has brought in Buddy McGirt, legendary fighter, very good trainer, renowned trainer. Joseph Parker, as I've mentioned, has brought in Andy Lee. I've tried to look for as much footage as possible of Andy Lee and Joseph Parker on pads, and there isn't much of it. There's, I think, collectively probably about 15 minutes worth on YouTube from different videos. So from that, I was trying to listen to what Andy Lee was saying in interviews about Joseph Parker, and he brought up something very interesting, and it was about kind of refining a lot of Joseph Parker's technique, as well as trying to get him to focus for the entirety of a round. And but then he also mentioned how he wants to get Parker less of his weight on the front foot, bringing it more backwards. And that kind of, I wasn't sure if I agree with that, because if you look at Parker's performances, when he fights someone who's taller, he's typically on the back foot. When he fights someone who's shorter, he's on the front foot. Now, I think Parker does have the height advantage. So I don't think that's Parker's problem. I think Parker's problem is he needs to know what he can set up depending on which position he's in. Can Andy Lee teach him that? It remains to be seen. But it's difficult to speculate because I've seen so little on how they've trained together. But I think that Parker's, other than a lack of tenacity at certain points in these high pressure situations, I believe that Parker's main physical weakness is that he runs out of ideas. He can typically look quite uncultured. If you look at the likes of the fights he had with Anthony Joshua and Junior Farr, which was his last fight, these guys were quite a bit taller than Joseph Parker. And he resorted to having the majority of his weight on the back foot and kind of just chucking a jab out, but leaning away at the same time, and then trying to load up on this right hand. It's very crude, and it's very amateurish, and it just reeks of, you know, a lack of creativity and a lack of true understanding of positions and what's available to you in each position. But because Chisora he doesn't have the stature of those guys. He's a very big man, you know, mass wise, you know, in terms of body mass, but height, you know, he's what, 6'1" at best. I'm just wondering if we'll start to see a bit more of a better setup and a better technique from Joseph Parker. It's a very interesting fight. And I'm just kind of waffling right now, but I've been thinking about this fight all week. Very exciting. Not sure if I'm going to pay for it just yet. Maybe unless I'm super bored tomorrow, and I pay for it, and, you know, hopefully it turns out to be a good one. But we'll see. Nevertheless, guys, if you want to discuss this fight with me, just drop a comment in the comment section. I'll get back to you. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. If you like the channel, why not subscribe? So yeah, thanks guys for listening, and let's see how these fights go. Thanks.